Good morning, everyone. I have to take a note here. Okay, you'll see why later. We were here very recently. I want to thank everybody. I'll thank everybody several times for the solstice last night, but it was just wonderful. And so this morning, the fourth Sunday, or actually the first Sunday before Christmas, which is the fourth Sunday of Advent, we light the Advent wreath, and I want to remind you that the first candle was to celebrate the earth and how the earth awaits the coming of the light. The second Sunday, we celebrated the plants and how the plants await the coming of the light. Last Sunday, we celebrated the animals, and this Sunday, we celebrate all of us, people, as we wait for the light. And just to let you know that the moment of solstice in our time zone is Monday night at 8:49. So that is the extreme position of the earth in relation to the sun, and then we get the light back. So let's sing our wonderful Advent song as I light 4 candles. And then, of course, if you join us on Christmas Eve, we will light the white candle in the middle, which signifies the sun, S-U-N, and the sun, S-O-N. Isn't that nice how that works out in English? It's beautiful. So right now, I would like to welcome every one of you who is here for the first time or kind of new. We have a brochure for you that tells you about us. We are so happy to have you. And all you have to do is raise your hand until somebody puts something in it. So there's a newbie. Welcome. And there's another one. Great. We hope you feel right at home, and thank you for braving the rain this morning. How great. I want to meet you personally after the service, so thank you for coming. Thank you all for braving the rain. And thank you, all of you that worked to be here again this morning. So we are really coming down the home stretch. Well, let me say, first of all, that and not as an aside, because it's very important. This is why we do every single thing, and that is our vision, which is awakening personal transformation, and our mission, which is teaching tools for positive change. And you're going to get some tools this morning for just that. So our theme for the whole year is Your Joyous Life, and we have this Sunday and next Sunday, and then we start a whole new theme. So I'm going to keep that a little bit of a secret because we want to consciously conclude this year and our theme of Your Joyous Life. The theme for December is being perfect within the oneness. So this is the little Christ child, as all babies are, as you were and are, and that is our perfection within the oneness. And our goal for December is keep working towards life mastery. So we have more to learn and to do, or we wouldn't be here anymore. So we haven't exactly mastered mastery, and that's why we're still here. So the title today is Happiness, Control, and Surrender. So this is actually a deceptively simple talk. I don't have a lot of brain width after last night, and so this is a really simple talk. But I want to say that it is true nonetheless. And sometimes it is the simplest ideas that are the most powerful. And so I don't want you to be deceived with the simplicity of this talk, because if we all did what I'm going to suggest we do this morning, we would have peace on earth. This room would be responsible for peace on earth if we all did what I'm going to say this morning. So the idea of control and surrender comes from our book, which I forgot at home. And it's right at the tail end of this book on the Happiness Project. And so the author is kind of musing about her progress this year with doing all of the things that she suggests that we do to create more happiness in our life. And she consults with her husband. She says, "Are you happier?" And he goes, "Well, not particularly." And then she says, "Well, do you think this has been a success this year?" And he says, "Well, I think what it is that you feel that you have more control over your life." And so she thought about that, and she said, actually, people having control over their lives is a great source of happiness. To be able to say what your life is about is a great source of happiness. So then that made me think about that. And what do I think about control? Because I work with control freaks, not in counseling, not that in the office. But in counseling, and it's hard for control freaks in this life, you know. So I thought about how much control can we hope for? Does it really make us happy? And when do we need to surrender because control is not an option? It takes experience and wisdom to discern this, and that, I think, is a really big source of happiness, to determine when and how we work for control and when and how we work for surrender. And it reminds me of the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What that basically says is, when we take charge of what we have control over, we're happier. And when we surrender to what we have no control over, we're happier, right? Okay, so you ready to figure out what we have control over and what we don't have control over? You probably all know the answer to this, but I had to sort it out. So I went online, and I found a list of 50 things that we have control over. And actually, I'm going to put this out in, I'm not going to read all of them to you. That would take too long. But there's 50 things that we have control over, and that's going to go out in the recap letter. So if you don't get the recap letter, all you have to do is go to our website and push subscribe. So, ready for this? Okay. We have control over how we judge, whether we call something good or bad. And it's not that our judgment is true. I mean, when we label something good or something bad, it's not because it is good or bad. It's just our judgment. And what we identify with or not in the good part, and what we repel about the bad part, we have control over. We also have control over the very reason we judge in the first place. And does that make you happy? Does it make you happy to identify with something that you like because I'm like that? and repel something that you don't like, that's the real problem, I think, because when we when every once in a while I get caught in Christian Facebook memes, and they talk about evil and what is evil, and you could name a bunch of things that they say, and I have a problem with that because when we label something as evil, whether it is witchcraft or Nazis or whatever it is we label as evil, we objectify them, separate ourselves, and then can do violence in our thoughts or in our actions. And so I personally try to avoid judging something as bad, except last night, of course, I did the altar for solstice, and I wanted to keep it up because we were just coming back here a few hours later, and I very carefully took it down and packed it away. That was bad. But then I got a chance to do this altar this morning, and it's something like the altar from last night, but the figure last night, of course, was Mother Gaia, and this morning she's Mother Mary. So it worked out just fine. So here are some of the questions, or some of the things that this list of 50 things says that we have control over. I have a code here. Okay. How much time do you spend trying to convince people you're right? That's under your control. How much you enjoy the things you have right now? That's under your control. How many risks you take? That is absolutely under your control. So how we judge things in our life and then how we proceed from that judgment is entirely within our control, and how we do that leads to happiness or discontent. Do you get that? Okay. Do you see how if we follow these brief little suggestions, it could change our life? Good. Next, what we mentally emphasize. We control what we place importance on, what we weigh heavy, and what we dismiss. So what we weigh heavy tends to show up more in our life because what we focus on increases. And we have absolute control over what we mentally emphasize. And combining that with judgment, the first one, then we really get into a lot of subtleties, because if we emphasize something that we really call bad, well, we get a lot of that in our lives, right? So what we mentally emphasize about ourselves, others, and the world, we have control over. And whether we emphasize what we think of as problems or as blessings, that we have control over as well. So here are some of those. How many negative articles do you read? That's under your control. How often you think about your past? That's under your control. And whether you think positive or negative thoughts most of the time, that is under your control. Next, we have choices about spending time, energy, and money, and how selfish or generous we are with these spendings. We have control over these things, and do you choose, you have control over whether you watch television in your spare time or whether you take a walk? That is absolutely under your control. So some of the questions about those things are: how many times do you smile every day? How much effort do you exert at work? Your level of honesty? How well you prepare? How often you say thank you, and when you pull your wallet out for luxuries. Here's another one. Whether or not you compete with people around you. Those are all things that are under your control. Next is how we present ourselves, how we dress, our posture, how we interact with each other. That's entirely our choice and within our control. And whether or not we present ourselves for our own comfort or for our challenge or for the comfort of others, that's under our control. And if we present ourselves as the expressions of God that we are, or whether we wilt. See, that's God calling and saying, this is right, listen. So we are spiritually whole, complete, and perfect, just like that baby picture at the beginning of the talk, the theme for the month. And if we act that way, then that's under our control. We have a choice about that. So here are some questions about that. How clean or uncluttered you keep your space, which commitments you keep and which you cancel, how much information you share with people, and how many times a day do you say, I love you? These are all ways that we present ourselves entirely within our control. And lastly, the big category is, how do we take care of ourselves? And that is completely within our control as well. And I want to remind you that how you treat yourself is how you teach other people how to treat you. So, how nice you are to yourself in your head, that is within your control. The type of food you eat, how much exercise you get, whether or not you plan for the weather. I love that one. So detailed. And whether or not you smoke or drink. So I've listed maybe about a third of these, and I'll put the other ones up as I said. So these are the things that we have control over. It's quite a bit, right? And if we take control of these, it makes us happy. If we abdicate control, we're not so happy. It's so simple. It's so simple. But we have to couple what we have control over what we have no control over. And that's what's coming now. Okay? This is what we have no control over whatsoever. These, just feel into these as we go and see if you wish you had control over these things. Okay? Other people. No. We basically have no control over our children, our spouse, our co-workers, the Republicans or the Democrats, or the waiters or anybody. We have the volunteers, we have no control over them. And when we try to control others, when we take this into the control category and think we have control, it leads to unhappiness, right? It always leads to unhappiness. Okay, a couple more things that basically are within this same category. The specific outcome of anything. Okay? We don't have control over the specific outcome of anything. Now, for those of you that have had a few classes, you might recall what we say all the time. And that is, it is done unto you as you believe. How can both of those things be true? That it is done unto you as you believe, and we have no control over the specific outcome of circumstances. Well, what we're after when we say, it is done unto you as you believe, it's not like, I believe I'm going to get a new red car. I believe I'm going to get a new red car. That is not how we use our creative energy within us. Rather, what we want is the felt sense of life. That's why when you go to a practitioner and you say, I want the money for the rent, or you say, I want the new red car, or you say, I want my true love and I want him now, the practitioner will ask you, how do you think you're going to feel when you have this? And that is what they work with. Because that felt state of, I have all of the supply I need. I have everything I need to get me from one place to another so that I can accomplish my life purpose. And I have the love in my life that I deeply desire to receive and give. That you have a chance of not even manipulating, but realizing that the world corresponds to your felt sense. I'll give you an example, a big one, world peace. We desperately want world peace, right? So if we affirm world peace in our mind and then we list off how that's going to appear, we have a less of a chance to feel peace than if we started there. If we seek after and replicate peace in our own hearts, then we learn to let go of consternation and unforgiveness, and then we become softer and more accepting of others, more instantly forgiving, and we become peaceful ourselves. And lo and behold, when we become peaceful ourselves, our world seems to become more peaceful as a reflection of our consciousness. But the world will never become more peaceful if you say, I want the world peaceful, but I still retain the, my tendency to rage every once in a while. That won't work for us. And that's why I wanted to keep this quote that came from Sarah and Francine, because this is what we're striving for. One must bring oneself to the place in mind where there is no misfortune, no calamity, no accident, no trouble, no confusion, where there is nothing but plenty, peace, power, life, and truth. If we said that to ourselves and had that felt sense, and you can conjure it, and it is kind of magical conjuring. You conjure the felt sense of plenty, peace, power, life, and truth. You can remember it. You can envision it. You can call it forth in this present moment, just reminding yourself that your next breath is always there. And that next breath is plentiful, it's peaceful, it's powerful, it's life-giving, and in truth, the next breath is there. So when we conjure that state of mind, we get it, and then the world miraculously looks different to us. And that is the miracle, actually. As we do our own work, the world seems to change. But it's because that we do the work. So remember when we said that we were about teaching tools for positive change? This is it. These are the tools for positive change, not only for your life, but for the world around you. Finally, there's one other thing I want to tell you that you have no control over, and that is the rest of the world. We have no control over the world. We have no control over our family, traffic, the price of oil. But as we change, we seem to inhabit a different world. It is miraculous. I mean, my world is continuously more to my liking. And I'm so blessed to be in this profession. I mean, I got to do this for I get to do this for me and for you. And the results are beautiful, beautiful. So, tagging this onto the Christmas story, I want us to consider Mother Mary. So, in the story, here are the conditions. There was no room in the inn. Anybody that's given birth has absolute knowledge that you have no control over when that baby comes. And she had no control over when the wise men showed up, when the shepherds showed up, none of that. She had no control. And seemingly, she had no control over bearing the Christ child, because at the Annunciation, the angel Gabriel just came to her and said, hey, you're the one. Would you like to be the one? No. You're the one that is going to birth the Christ child that will be the way shower for all of humanity. So, what did she do? She accepted and thereby surrendered to God. She surrendered all of the details of this story. There is no place in the Christmas story where Mary has one iota of control, except at the very end of the story when it says, Mary kept all these things in her heart and pondered them. That she had control over. She thought about her life. She thought about how it all happened. She thought about no room in the inn and how the wise men traipsed in and gave them useless gifts that they had to tote after that. And she pondered them. So she left the details to God. And that is what we must learn to do. Leave the details to God when we have no possibility of controlling the situation. And look, we can't control other people, the specific outcome of anything, or the rest of the world. We have no control over that. So we give those details to God. We do our work, and we give the details to God. And so basically, this is what I'm saying. We control how we come to life, but not how life comes to us. What we have control over is our reaction, our thoughts, our inner life, all of that on the inside. And if we take control of all of that and not be victim to anything, then we'll be happy. And if we surrender what is God's to God, we will also be happy. Because we will not be worrying about, oh, if I only did this, if I only did this, no. It won't matter. So, simple, huh? That's it. That's basically what I have to say. These are the spiritual principles. And the first one is, choice of my own mental atmosphere is in my power. And as I change myself, my world seems to change. So in conclusion, we really have control over everything we need to have control over. And that is how we bring ourselves to life, how we hold all those circumstances that are out of our control. If we came to them with an acceptance like Mary, if we came to them with, I have no complaint here. I don't understand this, but I am giving the details to God. We would be absolutely happy, and we would be working with that creative law in the most effective way that we possibly can. Because we would be using the creative law to reestablish peace, reestablish peace, reestablish peace every moment, all the time, all the time. So I have a Star Wars story for you in conclusion. This came on the minister's listserv. So there's a photograph of George Lucas in his study that was taken a number of years ago when he was being interviewed. And right there in the bookshelf is the Science of Mind textbook. Right there in George Lucas's study. So one of our ministers, also a number of years ago, met up with George Lucas in the world. And David Walker is the minister. Some of you might remember David Walker. He's gone on now. And so he came up to George Lucas and he said, I saw that photo of you at that interview where the Science of Mind textbook was right behind you, and it looked like you'd read it. It looked like the spine had been cracked. You know what George Lucas said to him? Where do you think the force came from? Yep. So your going deeper today is, I trust myself and I trust God. So let's do the inner work. All right. So one thing that I am sure of from today is that every single one of us has some examples where we say to ourselves, boy, I could take control over that and it would be good. Or I could surrender that and it would be good. So let's work with one of each. What in your life have you been victim to? Where you say to yourself, it's not my fault, it's not my responsibility, I'm not the one, this has nothing to do with me. And you remain sad or at the effect of that. Just for this moment, try saying, this is my responsibility, and I am now taking control of this aspect of my life. I don't have to change my behavior, but I change how I come to this part of my life. I come to this part with acceptance and with the ability to shift my own awareness so that I look at this as a blessing. And I'm going to try this out right now. And tuck that away as a tool for positive change, vowing to actually do it, and turn your attention to something that you want so much or you don't want so much that you have been spending mental, spiritual, and physical energy on this, and it feels like you're knocking your head against the wall. Try in this moment to say, God, take this. Take this from me. I of myself cannot do it. Take it, heal it, and may it be so. And feel how free, how beautiful life is without that burden. You have let it go. And so that ability to take responsibility for what is yours and to release what is not brings us to a state of intense well-being that is the new world that we live in. Blessed be.